Welcome back to the studio. Today we're doing another video. What are we doing today, Demaya?
We're making a 3-stone ring with 2 diamonds embedded in the shank on the inside.
We are making a ring. We are also making history because this is a very important moment in somebody's life. And we are using the customer's gold, super sentimental. It puts a lot of meaning into the job that we do as goldsmiths. Hopefully there's something within what we do that will inspire you or will give you a tip. We were given jewelry pieces that had mixed metal in it. Break all of that apart so that I've got just the yellow gold in one area. Mix all the 22 karat down so that it meets up with the 18 carats. You mix down 22 karat to 18 karat. How did you do that? We've done videos how we mix gold down. We have the gold, we can do it. We didn't have a finger size. The customer wanted to surprise his fiance. The temporary ring that she'd been given as an engagement ring was slightly too big. She's expecting a sizing for the ring she brought in. He wanted a 3-stone ring because she's mentioned this before. As a gift from our side, we scaled the side stones up ever so slightly from the original ones that he chose. I'm using the strip of platinum that I bought and I'm selecting a small little piece which I'd like to keep to the side. I need this little piece to create the little section that sits on the finger, the part that touches the finger. I'm going to be making 3 separate settings and I'm going to be joining those settings to the bottom part. Once I've rolled it to be appropriate for the top part of the settings, it would be unnecessary to remelt that metal and to reprocess it to the point where I'm already at. Time to create 3 separate settings. I'll make them exactly the same diameter as the diamonds themselves. I need the stones to lie on top of the settings. I don't want to see any of the settings from the top. You can work out mathematically exactly how long these strips must be before you bend them around to get a certain diameter for the diamond, but in this case, bend them around, have a look, put the diamond on top of the setting, and if you find that it's slightly too big, cut a little bit off and bring it down until it's perfect. This concept of working by eye is very important. It increases your speed, trains your eye. Next time it comes around, you have a basic understanding of how long you should be working. I always forge platinum by melting platinum on platinum. Can be using a laser for this as well. We use the old school way of just bringing the parts together, putting a thin piece of platinum in between, sandwiching it over there and heating the platinum to a point where it gets red hot and melting that thinner part on top of the platinum all the way around. Forge it to start off with, then you don't have any solder marks. You don't have any particular parts that you have to cover. There's no weak spot on the metal whatsoever. To get the basic shape, I take a swage block, turn it so that I've got a groove, take a small ring triplet, put the setting over that, put it up against a swage block, and with a little bit of pressure from the one side, just pressing slightly towards this side, I give it very light taps, not something that's going to necessarily change the thickness of the metal. Every single time I tap just ever so slightly, it motivates a rounder shape as it's going up on the triplet itself. Then I move to my cone punch. I will be filing a taper on these settings. I'm not using the cone punch to necessarily taper it. I'm using the cone punch to create a perfectly round setting and also to get exactly to the size that I'm looking for. Compress it ever so slightly and then going from the inside, making sure that the outside is stretched right up to the ends, ensures that I have a perfectly round setting. Now I've got to determine my 4 points because I'm using 4 claws. Once I've got my marks, I cut slightly from the top right down to the side, and then I can actually hold the setting like this and make sure that my blade is 100% in the center, and then I make a mark all the way down. We've done videos on how to mark them with its square punches as well. I'm only working with small little sections where the stones are lying on. They're not full cones right down to the bottom. I want to shape them. So if this is the straight parallel part, slightly probably in because I've used a cone punch on it, file them down, put the angles on top of them by filing very smooth, consistent line angle down from the top to the bottom, respecting the top because that's the size that we've actually measured for the stone, and then working that off, finalizing it with the rubber wheel, making sure that this project, this part that we've created is finished and we can move over to the next step. It's time to create the wires. I'm creating the wires out of the very same platinum that I bought, drawing it down so that it gives it a nice strong consistency. I'm going down to 0.8, 0.9 in this case, depending on the size of the stones. I didn't want to spoil it by overwhelming the design with the wires. I just need them to do their job. To bring them together, I've already made a mark right here. Take that mark where I've marked it and I want to create a little half round shape. I like to go 1/3 of the wire into the actual setting itself, so that when I place a stone and I bring the wire together, 1/3 of the wire thickness gets cut away for the setting to be folded over. That works well because it leaves 2/3 of the wire thickness for protection and for strength. In this case around, I make a plate that sits on the finger itself. It has the diameter basically that follows the size that I'm looking for. By filing the settings, bringing them together, I can make sure that the side setting, if you had to draw it inwards towards the center, is in line with the top setting, which should do the same, and this one that should do the same. So my angles all face towards the center. Created two little spaces as I usually do, put them on the ends to make sure that the height is equal and balanced all the way from the one side to the other side. I'm going to shape the plate the same size as the settings themselves. So that means I can take the plate, cut it right into the corners where the two corners meet, cut it right down to that point on each one of the ends where it comes into meet the two stone settings, and then remove the metal away from the bottom so that it creates the look that we have a split section that holds a stone. There's many reasons for this. That's weight saving, it's aesthetic. At the same time, it lets a lot of light in, so it's practical as well. I'm also shaping it not to be straight like this, but to come in slightly towards the center. So my angles on my top section that I filed in follows through all the way to the bottom. I have a shape at the bottom now. I can turn this around at this point and create a little opening in the center part where the stones lie, so that it looks like three separate settings are put together. I start with a very small ball phrase over here and then slowly enhance it so that I have an equal spacing, an equal frame going around everything. You've got a bit of time again with the setting. This is the main part of the ring. This shank is really secondary. What we're going to do next is take those little grooves that we've created for the wires and mirror them by running a parallel phrase from the top down to the bottom, so that the thing that connects the top and the bottom will be the wires, the way that they're held together. We've got the little spaces on the sides. Those are irrelevant. The support part are the wires. We're going to add those on now. And again, when you're adding the wires on, this is a good time to make sure that they're absolutely perfectly straight and in line. Your shapes will be the same all the way around. Go slow with the wires. Once you've committed, it's on there. I usually tack the wires on first, and then when I'm happy with the actual setting, I commit to it. Take it easy. Once you're done with that, I'm using now platinum hard solder to get the first solders down. Remember, we don't use flux with platinum solder. Literally just placing a little piece of platinum solder between two parts and making sure that both of those parts are hot enough to share that solder equally. There's no need for this. It actually contaminates the platinum. Stay away from flux. Place the platinum to the side and reach for the gold. This is the gold from the grandparents, the sentimental gold, which we mix down. We're making a shank. We're back on the yellow gold. Clean your platinum off the desk. We're working with 18 karat yellow gold now. I'm making the ring quite chunky, and the reason for that is I want some of that top of the ring to be compressed. I'm compressing it for two reasons. When it moves up towards the setting, it emphasizes the setting, so it draws the eye towards the main part, which are the stones, and at the same time it flattens it this direction, so it flattens it up higher, which means that it meets up with the setting better. The setting has a certain height, and if your side doesn't meet up with the setting, to break it down from the top down to the bottom, it might look like your setting pops up, it stands too high. So you want to meet up the setting, which is why I make it the thickness I do. Once I've done this, I can take my setting, lie it right down on top of it, and make a basic preliminary line on the top to know where I can cut away. If you're going to go too big, it's going to go straight down. So always try and work slightly smaller. Of course, we can file away slightly on the edges to make sure that when we drop that setting, we can get it perfect to the point. So slightly smaller and then enlarge it as you're going. So the platinum setting comes to a point where you have two claws on either end, but then between those two claws you have a little section that's the setting itself. Between those two claws, I want to sneak in over there so that the claws are sort of like on the outer part, and the connection I'm making is on the actual setting. It gives me more real estate to solder on it. At the same time, if I just go flat, I'll have a little gap there, which I'm trying to avoid. Everything needs to have a function or a visual purpose. So I'm taking the section that I've just cut and I'm giving an angle this way and that way so that it slides past the two claws and it deals with the setting on the inside. And over the years, this is how I've developed it. I like it. It looks right to me. I like a bit of a chunkier jewelry. I know that it's going to last slightly longer if I give it a little bit more meat. The setting has been slotted in to the actual shank. I'm going to remove the two now and I'm going to address the shank's shape. What I want to do now is there's a lot of bulk going towards the bottom It's unnecessary in this case. So I'm now going to break down the thickness, leave the top where we've created the height that it meets up, and then break it down ever so slightly. I'm shaping the shank now. I'm going to give it a very soft rounding on the outside, and I also want to leave enough material so I can give it a bit of soft rounding towards the inside as well. Plus, I'm setting diamonds inside the shank. I need some meat there. When soldering 18 karat and it's meeting up with platinum, you're not going to be using platinum solder because the 18 karat will melt. I'm using a hard 18 karat solder. And another thing to mention, the part that I've cut away is the part where I've soldered on the 18 karat. So we've got a clean shank all the way down. Doesn't really matter, it's a personal preference, but if you're working in reverse like that, you've essentially got one piece of gold. Adding some detail at the bottom of the claws. You're not going to see it from the top, but when the person who wears the ring takes it off at night and puts it down there, they can admire something else you've done. You can do your own little thing. I put the saw frame in the inside and I cut towards the edges. I don't cut all the way, I just give it a little bit of an extension. There were tiny little stones that came out of the rings that had incredible sentimental value to them. Adding them to the design itself, they wouldn't work in the design. It will take something away from something else we're trying to do. But we can incorporate those tiny stones, and what I've done is I've put them into the actual shank. Makes it more special in a way because now the stones are touching the finger. The thickness of the shank that I've left at the bottom accommodates the stone's height. Setting a round stone inside of a ring, I would start with finding the middle part with a very small ball phrase and always turning it, making sure that you're staying in the middle, enlarging the ball phrase continuously, but not going past the diameter that you need. In fact, you want to be a fraction smaller than the diamond's diameter that you're setting into the thing. We've got very minimal forgiveness on a setting like this. If you take the stone and you're placing it on top of the little cavity that you've created, that the stone just does not fit. Once you've got the stone at that point, you can remove it, cut a little groove on the inside for the little stone to be seated in, and then force the stone by pressing it in sideways, getting it to the point where it doesn't fit, and then forcing it so it clicks into the setting. That way I know that the stone is already set, and all I need to do is make it pretty and make sure that we've got the extra support around it all the way around. You can use anything to do the rub over around the stone. I like to take burrs that break off, round the little tops off and polish them up so that when I run it around the stone, I can go right up to the top, and it also creates a nice little bright area, putting nice emphasis on the set work itself. Go down with the ball phrase as deep as what the table or the height of the stone is. We don't want the stone to stick out because if you put the ring on a ring stick later on, you're hammering it round, that diamond has the possibility of breaking. So you want to make sure that the diamond is flush. The top of the diamond is flush with the level of the inside of the ring. So that's it, another one of our creations. I hope you see that in making these rings by hand, there's something that goes into it. There's emotion, there's thought that goes into these things, and the fact that we can connect the sentiment with it is actually, it adds so much to the type of work that we do. It gives it purpose, and it's so much more rewarding. And also delivering this item, remember I said that she thought she's going to be picking up a sizing. So for us to deliver a brand new ring, incredibly happy with the product. This was a great experience for the whole family. Everybody got involved, and it was just special to be involved with it from our side as well. It was an honor, to be honest, to be involved in something like this. It makes the product more special. It gives a story to the whole occasion. Thank you very much for the support that you've been giving to us. Subscribe, like, comment. We do try and get to the comments. We read them all, and if we get back to the comments as quick as we possibly can. Please comment if you've got any questions, and thank you very much for watching, as per usual. See you next time.